And you.
So thank you. And for those who might be joining us for the first time, my name is Cheryl Cortese. I've been a national marketing director now with the Juice Plus Company for almost 34 years, and a wonderful, amazing place to be, especially as you listen to the stories tonight. Excuse me. And it's just always an amazement to me that, whatever the person needs, it just seems to fit. It really is so foundational. I talk about that often, that Juice Plus is just really foundational for any and everything that we need from a food standpoint. But as I was listening to the last speaker, Eileen, and it always too, I find it interesting. Often we identify and look back, and again, just so grateful for Juice Plus in my own life. I think about my whole history as far as health, and I was a very sickly little child, and I used to remember thinking as a little child, well, it's grown-ups that are healthy. Once I get to be a grown-up, that's when it's going to happen. And then I got to be a grown-up, and I wasn't exactly seriously ill, but I was never really well. And just Juice Plus didn't come along until I was either 48 or 49 years old. And I really, life had gone along, where it was kind of a struggle to be healthy always. And I felt like, well, it was only going to go downhill from there. And what a blessing Juice Plus has been for me. The healthiest years of my life have been from 50 till today. And if you think about Juice Plus, we've had it, what, 28 years. So I guess you can kind of figure that out. But who would have thought that this segment of life, and it continues that way, would be the really healthiest years, and that looks like it's going to continue in that fashion, which is very exciting. So when you think about what you have to offer to people, it's so very powerful, so very powerful. Well, we're really coming back to this call again to continue our discussion around John Maxwell leadership, the questions that he posed to us in the event that was done for some of the leadership for the company. But I really love the talk that he did. He's written, I think, something like 35 books, and I'm not here to necessarily promote John Maxwell. It's just that some of this information I felt was really good. His latest one was The Leader's Greatest Return, but I also ordered this one, which I started reading, and it goes along too with the question that we've been talking about that he'd given us. But good leaders ask great questions. And even in just, I'll have to say, I'm only through the first maybe chapter, 2 chapters, uh, because it just came. But even in interpersonal conversation, family conversation, business conversation, just the realization that it's really questions that not only give you that introspective look, but help you really get to learn and listen to other people. I've always said that our business is one that you want to, take what we have and shape it around that person that you're talking to, shape it around their desire, their wants, their needs, what they want for their life, what they're looking for. And questions help you really do that. And so let's get back to the 4 or 5 questions that we put out for this group. And we're fortunate enough that, we're a relatively manageable number with 40 to 50 people on this call that we can have discussion as compared to Monday night where we have hundreds and hundreds of people on. So we love Monday night as far as our Monday night call, but I also like this being able to interact. So a number of you last time had answered the first question, what's the greatest lesson you've ever learned to date in your life? What do you feel is the greatest lesson you've ever learned? And we got a lot of wonderful input. I've actually used some of it, not because it's not only your own perspective, but that perspective of others seems to, really, I guess we could say, expand your own thinking and realization for yourself. So before we go to the next one, which is what are you learning right now? Let's see if there's anybody else before we leave the first question. What is the greatest lesson you feel you've learned today? Is there anybody else who would like to share that tonight before we go on to the next one? Anybody? What's the greatest lesson you feel you've learned to date in your life? How has that impacted you? Anyone want to go back to that question before we go to the next one? Don't be shy. Nobody was shy last week. We also posed this to our national marketing directors and our Qs, and it's very interesting. Anybody want to?
I'll share something. I think one of the great, another lesson I've learned that it's okay to shine. Sometimes people don't want to shine, and it's okay to do that.
Well, and that's really important to hear and to incorporate. We grow up in a society where when we were growing up, children are seen, not heard. Okay. Uh, be humble. That's part of, a lot of basis of religion. And all those things, are appropriate in the right place. But no one tells you, you want to shine and just, fill the room with that glow. And so I think that's very important that we incorporate that you can be humble, and you can fill a lot of those other things that were kind of shaped as far as shaping your thinking, but you can shine too. Thank you, Ruth. Anyone else before we leave that question of what's the greatest lesson you feel like you've learned, maybe that has reshaped your thinking? Well, let's go to the next question then, because this was the one for tonight. We have one or two. What do you think you're learning right now? Because we're always learning. I mean, let's face it, that is ongoing. What are the things that you can be certain of in life? You can be certain that things are going to change. They always do. Uh, Life is always, I mean, I've found for myself too, if we talk about what have you learned, is that we all have this idea in our head of what life is going to be like exactly. And it's never that. Sometimes it's better, sometimes it's more challenging, but it's usually not exactly what we had thought. So, we're constantly learning to reshape, to be flexible, all of those types of things. So, what are you learning right now? If you were to think about, of course, we've all come through some really unusual experiences and are still in a lot of unusual experiences as compared to maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I feel like the last year has been 4 or 5 years long anyway. But what do you feel you're learning right now? Who wants to share that? What do you feel you're learning right now?
Cheryl,
Mm-hmm.
I'm learning to have much more patience and to give people the time that they need to make the decision. Because when you meet somebody and you know they'd be great and you want them on your team, but if you can't always get them right away, and I said this before, sometimes you create drama in your head about what's going on, but you're not in their life and you don't know what they're going through. I've had so many people say, I'm so glad you didn't give up on me and that you gave me time. But I have to tell you, in between that, I have contacted them. I don't just forget about them. So I keep circling back, but I need to have more patience like Job, you know.
Well, patience is a big one. And again, if you think about it, we live in a society where, people want instant return. They want instant everything. You want an instant remedy. Uh, I want to go to the gym once and come out, really fit, things of that nature. But I think it's for all of us. Patience is a big thing, and we find it as we're raising our families. Patience is huge, but in our businesses as well. So in both personal life and in business life, patience is certainly something. And I think our patience is being tested every day as we look at this last few years, or at least the last couple of years. For me, I feel like what I'm learning right now is how to live with uncertainty. I'm one of those people that I don't really like I like to know what's going on. I like to know what's happening. I like to have a plan. Okay. And so, that it's a big thing for me, a challenge to live with uncertainty. And I feel like that's one of the things that the lesson I'm trying to learn right now is how to do that and keep myself out of the, stress about. So who else would like to give us some input? What are you learning right now? And thank you, Mickey. Who else? What are you learning right now?
I'll share. This is Erica in Oakland. Hi.
Hi.
Hello. I'm learning about relaxing with all that's going on and relaxing with all the changes that we are adjusting to, continuing to adjust to. And I've had the busiest year of my life as a therapist and in Juice Plus as well. And so there is this quality of like, how much can I play? How good can I stand it? To have fun with everything and to show my healthy lifestyle as I go. I go traveling to Utah, traveling across the country with my friend, going to the triathlon thing I shared about a couple of weeks ago, like just showing and living the life of health and inspiration. And my nieces came to visit me this past week, and they have parents who are very much in like more regular jobs, shall we say. And they were like, Aunt Erica, how can you do this? Like, how do you do this? And they met all these friends of mine who are also having unusual careers that are not, they're solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, health professionals. And I was like, there's a whole world out here, and we do what we do, and we get to make our own schedule. And they were really kind of blown away. It was like a cultural experience for them to see all the playing that we do as a regular thing. So just flowing with it and asking really good questions. And I love that phrase, ditch the pitch. So that's what I've been learning about.
So just, being authentic and living in the now is what I seem to be hearing you say as well. And that, and I have to agree with you, this past 2 years or a year and a half, however long ago this started with COVID and this whole pandemic, I've worked harder, as far as having more to do. I don't know that the word work is so much applied to it, but there's a lot to do. And we've had to reshape how we go about doing it. But just being in the now is a very important aspect as well of how you are comfortable and feel good interacting in the world as you go through. I think that what you're alluding to too is finding joy even though there's stress around you. That's one of the things I'm working on is, really recognizing joy even though there's stress. Where does the joy show up? How, pay attention to the joy as well. And Erica, it sounds like that's a lot of yours as well from what you're sharing, because I think it's really an important part. One of the things I've always loved about our business is that we can design it, the way we choose in a sense, but to do it, to be able to do something in a joyful manner that you love and recognize the joy as you go along is really important. Who else might give us some input on what are you learning right now?
Cheryl, it's Amy. I'll add, this is kind of consistent with what others are saying. Part of what I'm learning, it's not just the life lesson, but the fact that the company is always reinventing itself, whether it's a new product or the new IT activities and features and compensation plan and bonuses. So the company really is reminding us that we're all need to stay in an open-minded learning curve. And I still have lots more to learn, even though I've been with the company 20 years. So I feel like if I bring somebody on board, I can say to them quite honestly, we're going to learn this together because there's still so much to learn. And
it's really being comfortable with the evolution.
Yes.
I think about when I started, it was a rotary dial phone. That was it. And I was terrified of the fax machine when it first came out because I did not understand how those words could be written and show up somewhere on the other side of the world. And
Yes.
we've come so far since then. So,
And and related to that is the idea that sometimes we have to remind ourselves that we are human beings, not human doings, and that sometimes it's okay to just be enough with where you are right now and not add stress to ourselves because we're not where we want to be.
well, and that's great input. Thank you. Who else would like to share with us on what are you learning right now?
Hey, Cheryl, this is Dave, Santa Barbara. For me, it's very interesting. I'm sure a lot of us have struggled with this. Learning to accept people, even though their opinion's exactly the opposite of what you believe because of what you know with nutrition, and to not, and that has enabled me that when I connect with people about Juice Plus business, I leave the Dave agenda behind and I bring their needs and their concerns forward to me. And we talk about that. And I think it's made me a better, more insightful listener. And I spent a lot of my life doing the Dave show where it's all about me. I don't know if anybody can relate about that, but I find that today it's all about the other person. And once I open that door, things become pretty effortless, so that's what I'm kind of facing and understanding right now. That's pretty new.
That's a big step for any of us to really be able, because especially, at this point in time, it seems like people are very opinionated. I mean, as we've noticed over the last year or two. And so, to be able to really accept somebody else without judgment, I think that's a lot of it, Dave, is without judgment. I'll never forget when I was in college, I remember a psychology professor talking about unconditional positive regard toward other people. And I thought that would be a good philosophy of life, in a sense, that because, as he explained it, unconditional positive regard was a respect for whatever the other person's thoughts or their feelings were. Doesn't mean that you had to take them on as your own, but that you didn't have to be in conflict with them either. That you could accept without judgment, and yet you were entitled to your own as well. So, but being able to listen without judgment often is, that's a big growth thing as well. And we all work on that, I think, to a certain extent. Thank you, Dave. Anybody else on what you're learning now before we go to the next question? Anyone? Okay, why don't we go to this one? How has failure shaped your life, and how has it made you different? Again, we're talking about from the very beginning, we always have this idea as we're growing up what life's going to be like. I'm going to grow up and I'm going to be such and such. Well, that doesn't always come about exactly the way you thought it did. Many things change as life goes on. And sometimes failure shows up, sometimes difficulty shows up that we didn't expect. Almost always, difficulty shows up that you don't expect. So how do those things shape your life, and how has it made you different? Who would like to give us some input on that? How has failure or difficulty shaped your life?
Hi, Cheryl.
Hi.
I look a mess.
Hey,
Karina from Anaheim, California. I always say LA because that's the biggest point, but I just wanted to share. I'm sitting here and I'm like in super work mode. Failures, I think, teach you those tough lessons. I don't know if you guys have ever experienced failure on a level that I have. I know I'm not as old as you guys are in this group, but I feel like in every aspect of my life, the hard lessons are the ones that involve failure. And I think they end up being blessings. In Spanish, we have a saying that says, I'm trying to think the exact, I knew Spanish, it was my first language, but I think it is no hay mal. I'll say it in English. There's no bad that good can't come from.
Mhm.
And so I think that's something that we can all learn from, you know, what did I do wrong? Evaluating yourself, taking a step to look back, and, you know, I agree with all the things that people have said as far as lessons that they've learned in this business. So I just wanted to share.
Well, and I think you're really right about, if you can look for and sometimes it's really hard to see the blessing till you can look back, because you can't feel the blessing usually when you're in the midst of it, right? When you're in the
Yes,
midst
you
of it,
have to
like,
take a step back.
it has to be in looking back. And I always hear Jeff Roberti, my sponsor, say that there's got to be a blessing somewhere. There's a blessing somewhere in this, I'm sure. I think about, for all of us, I think we have all, as life goes on, there are experiences which are very difficult to deal with. And some of them you think, how could a blessing come from that? Whether it might be a divorce that you didn't want, it might be an illness that you didn't expect to have. I know when I guess I was in late 20s, I was 29, I had a surgery that probably was a misdiagnosis to begin with, and it went very badly. And the after effect was really, really bad. I was in a horrible state for about a year and a half. I lost down to 80 pounds. I, really was just non-functional and really didn't think I was going to survive it. And I did. Obviously, we're still around here. So, but to me, that was the worst possible thing that I'd ever experienced. But what it did, if what was the blessing in it, was that as I got onto the other side, as life went on, I always thought, well, if I can get through that, I can get through anything. I can get through anything. I felt almost invincible because I had managed to survive. And I heard Sam last time say, if you find yourself in hell, just keep walking. You'll get out. You'll come out on the other side. So I think many times there can be things that happen to you that are so very difficult that once you do, get through them, they leave you with that feeling that you're a lot stronger and you can handle most anything. Who else might have something they'd like to share with us as far as difficulty, or how has it reshaped your thinking, as far as yourself and your abilities? And it doesn't just have to be about our business, but how has failure or difficulty shaped you, and how has it changed your life? Who else would like to share that? Anybody?
Hi, Cheryl. I'll share. It's Jessica.
Okay.
So the first thing I thought of was the Brave Leaders course that I got to take a few years ago. And I remember we were doing this whole focus group on vulnerability and just how to be more vulnerable with people. And, something kept coming up in the group around, how do people know truly who you are? And I think in my field of work as a dietitian, everybody has this perfect picture that I'm the perfect eater, that I work out every day, that I never eat chocolate, I never eat pizza, I never have a sip of wine or anything like that. And I remember, somebody saying to me that, you need to show people your bullet holes and you need to be vulnerable with people so that you can be more relatable, right? And it was through that I started to really share my, family history of mental health. And that, I really shared with people, the fact that, we have been, unfortunately, our families had a lot of suicide and addiction, and people were just floored to hear that, because they had this, certain, thought in their mind about who I was because I was a dietitian. And so through that, I've always have shared more with people up front to let them know that I'm just like you, that, I like to, indulge and do certain things and become more relatable with people instead of trying to be the know-it-all all the time. And I think in our business, people are always coming to us for advice, whether it's related to nutrition, wellness, sleeping, hydration. And sometimes we just have to kind of, remember the difficulties that we deal with every day and know that people want to hear that and know that they're just as normal as we are. And so I remember, that course, and I remember Brene Brown saying in the course is that, if you're not failing, you're never trying anything new, right?
And that's Maxwell as well. So, excuse me, so important. What you've just shared is so powerful, because especially in our business, we want to be the image of success. We want people to
Right.
be drawn to success. And I can identify with this so much. When I first started this, Jeff Roberti and I, we did have a really good start. That first month or two, it was really good. And for 2 years, I didn't let anybody see anything except, success. And what happens, and it's what you're saying, if they don't know the other side of the picture, they can't identify with it, or they feel like they could never be as good as, or, they could never achieve it because, and if anybody had really looked at what my first months or year were like in this business, some of it was horrible. Okay, it was that first month we did really well. I had 14 frontline, what would be known today as QSCs. So it moved really fast. That next month, as we went into that next month, some things happened that were just, horrific. First of all, none of us knew anything about this company, and the check was supposed to show up, and nobody's check. Mine didn't show up, and so that was the first big thing that got to be really uncomfortable. My marriage was having difficulty, and that was exactly the same time it came apart, and he left. And one of what would have been our QSCs, the 5th week that we were in business, so to speak, we were doing a meeting, and he had a heart attack, and he died in the meeting. And actually, my brother was a distributor there with us, and he gave him CPR, and they got him in the ambulance, and looked like he was going to be okay. And then he died on the way to the hospital. And so if anybody had asked me, what was that first 6 weeks really like? I mean, it was, my husband left there. They're dying in the office and the check's in the mail. That could almost sound humorous 25 years later, but it was awful. And so, I think, and I didn't tell that story for at least 2 to 3 years until, like you, Jessica, somebody said, maybe you should tell people what it was really like, because they can identify with the fact that we all meet with struggles, and it's getting through those struggles that really give you the strength to become, successful as time goes on. So I think that's a very, very important, and we probably have all had experiences like that, where, we feel like we have to show up being perfect, or being totally successful, or being something that somebody who's never had difficulty, or if they had, they just, handled it with no problem. I think that everybody needs to be able to identify. So thank you for that input. We're a little past time, but if anybody has anything else here on that, and thank you, Jessica, for that input. Anybody else? Well, the last question, and maybe we can go into it next time, is how has success, shaped your life? Because again, sometimes, failure, we want to, we either want to forget, to hide, to not really share for people who think that we're weak. Instead, it really puts you in a position where people can identify with you, and you can be strong together. And I think that's one of the things about our community. that really does make us who we are is that, you know, people do show up for each other when there is difficulty in a way that I don't think happens anywhere else. Uh, but also success. Next week, let's talk about success. Think about that. I mean, everybody has successes in their lives as well. And sometimes, though, we are just as afraid of success as we are of failure. Uh, I think you should think about this. You know, if you look at success, how do you deal with success? We get back to the word deserve. You know, do you feel like, what do you feel you deserve? I'll never forget the first time someone asked me, or we talked about that in a mastermind session, like, what do you deserve? And I'll pose this question for next week because I I never thought about that. You know, we grow up with maybe being told um, what we deserve or don't deserve, or we shape this. Our thinking is shaped by everything: the social structure, the religion we're brought up in, the community, the thinking of the community and society. So, what do you feel like you deserve? Because that usually goes along its thought process, as we go through life on what we deserve. Uh, is success something that you want, but maybe you're a little frightened of? I had a national marketing director. She's a national marketing director now. She wasn't at the time. She was a Q, and we had a discussion, and she said, I'm terrified to become a national marketing director. And I just, it was like, but that's what you're going for. Yeah. And she said, no, but I'm really frightened because I'm afraid I'll lose all my friends. If I become really successful, my friends will feel like I'm pulling away from them. And so, I think we should think about those things because, all of that goes into um, how it shapes up, how it works out. So we're going to close with that. We'll come back next week with what do you feel like you deserve? How do you handle success? How has it shaped your life or reshaped your life? Or so those can be really important questions, both failure and success. And I think what's pointed out by John Maxwell or Brene Brown or many of these is that you have to have both. Both are there in your life. And so how you view that within yourself, how you show up for yourself. I mean, this is another thing to think about is, the person you have the most conversation with during your lifetime is you. It's yourself. You're having conversation with you all the time. And that conversation is really what shapes your entire life. And I've really, I've tried to be the guardian at the gate of my mind, you might say, as far as these conversations are concerned, because, again, are they empowering you? Are they limiting you? Are you giving yourself negative input? It would be easy to do because our media is constantly feeding us negative. So we report that negative to ourselves as well. And we want to really be, I would encourage you, and I'll work at this, and it's not easy, but I try to capture those thoughts, as they go across my head about how am I reacting to not only what I hear, but what I think, because it shapes your life so much. So again, we're now 10 minutes past, but I will say goodnight for now, and we'll get back. Next week will be our last week on this particular topic. So again, the questions on, and I would continue to think about these and maybe even to journal on them. What's the greatest lesson you've ever learned? What are you learning now? How has failure shaped your life? Has it made you different? And how has difficulty shaped your life? Has it made you different? And how has success shaped your life? And has it made you different? And what's the conversation you're having with yourself about all of these things? Because that's really important. You're the main talker in your universe. Okay. So thinking about this next week, in a week we'll have Q School. We'll have Jay Martin with us. Hopefully he and I've been talking about it. We'll have Stuart, our new CEO, with us. If you are QSSC or above, or anyone in your organization who is, it's free, it's virtual. You can be right there in your own home. And so Jeff and I'll do it, as well as the speakers. Lauren Lahav will be our graduate advisor. And so next Friday, a week from tomorrow, we would encourage you to participate with us. Everybody in your organization participate with us, and we'll be discussing leadership. It's for intensive leadership training, and hopefully to answer and encourage people on to national marketing director. Our Q schools have always produced national marketing directors, and one of the things I'm excited about on this Q school is that Mike Clifton at the home office is going to dress up in a tuxedo and walk us through a virtual tour of the home office. I think that'll be a kick, but we're also going to get to go see the warehouse virtually, which we've never been able to do before. So it'll be exciting. I encourage you all to participate, or to have people in your organization participate. Anyone who's QSSC or above can reach out to Missy and we'll get you registered. Okay. Great being with everybody. Thank you for the conversation tonight, and we'll look forward to next week. Okay. Good night.
Thanks, Cheryl. Great call, everybody. So good.
Great
Thank you
call.
so much.
Thank you,
Bye,
Cheryl.
everybody. See you next week.
Thank you,
Bye.
Cheryl.
Great call.
Bye.
Bye.